Welcome everyone to Solar 102, Electrify Everything, the coming revolution. So excited to be sharing all of this exciting stuff with you. And this is the real home sweet home. So if you're thinking about improving your home, selling real estate, people buying and selling homes, this is the real home that supports everything. And so I really appreciate you being here and taking time to think about what we can do to better preserve this amazing place where we live. This session is one of a series of 4 that I'm doing for real estate in particular, but it's open to anyone, where we look at the basics. Solar 101 is the top 10 tips. Solar 102 is this, the Electrify Everything. Solar 201 is how to be an ambassador. So if you want to be a referral partner, and then 202 is how to really dive in and grow your biz with solar. We also have a lot of weekly and monthly meetings through Powur, weekly presenting the business model at powurhour.com. On the 3rd Saturday, we do a Powur Day, and I do something on the 4th Sunday that is 5 ways to rock your world with solar for anybody who's just thinking about how can I make a bigger impact in my life. A little bit about me. I've been doing this stuff for a long time. When I went to college in 1978, I said, I want to do solar. And they said, we don't really have that. And so I got my electrical engineering degree and have been finding ways to be a part of this whole thing ever since. The topic that we're looking at today is electrify everything. And the general idea is let's electrify everything and power it with clean, renewable fuel. Another way to think about this is that there is a solution to the climate crisis. We just need to hurry up and implement it. So we need to clean the grid, electrify all vehicles, and electrify all fossil fuels in our buildings. And we'll be talking more about this later, but I want to just present this kind of as an overview. So one of the things that really frustrated me when I was doing real estate after doing my career in building energy efficiency and sustainability was to see that people were still promoting things like gas cooktops are great. It's got extra gas fireplaces, gas this, that, and the other. And once you understand that if we're going to reduce our carbon emissions, that means stopping burning fossil fuels, and that means stopping burning gas. So when we are looking at electrifying everything, that means going through the home and reducing the energy usage for one thing with weatherization. And then our cooking, it could be induction, or it could just be regular electric range. For our cars, clothes dryers could be a heat pump clothes dryer, or where I'm staying now, they just took out the dryer and put up drying racks. So it doesn't all have to be high tech, but the whole idea is to stop using fossil fuels. A lot of times that's going to require some talking between all these different technologies to get there. Heat pumps, which we're going to be talking with Reed about a little bit later. So if you can electrify everything, use less power, and with solar, you've just done that. You've made that step right there. And it's cool because the place that I'm staying right now has done all of that. I heard the guy here talking to his niece saying, yeah, we power our cooking, our cars, and keeping the house hot and cold just through these panels on our roof. It's really amazing. It's pretty much what we've all been wanting for a very long time, but it's actually possible now. But at the same time, I'm hearing a lot of people saying, oh, I just replaced my furnace and my AC unit with a new one last year. So it's critical for real estate and for all of us to be letting people know what this bigger picture is. Solar is really just one part of this electrification story. As I've been interviewing different people and researching this, there's a few really great resources that I've come across. Rewiring America is one of them. The energyinnovation.org is another. Colorado has the Beneficial Electric League of Colorado. There might be others out there. Love Electric is their website. Citizens Climate League, Climate Reality Project. There's tons of people that are working on this. So if you're interested in being able to share more about this, you don't have to create these materials from scratch. We're not actually going to watch this video, but if you're trying to help people understand what all is going on, Saul Griffith is a great resource. He has a bunch of these different videos talking about 100 million machines and how to get to a zero emission future. It's really important for people to know that there is a solution. People have it figured out, and we can just be working on it right now. And there's a few other books if people want to dive in, The Big Fix, as well as Electrify, which is with Saul Griffith, which we just talked about. And I love too, it's Practical Steps and The Optimist Playbook. So these aren't books that are just about doom and gloom of climate change. This is what are we going to do? And step by step, what do we need to do? And Electrify Everything is the framework. There's also a podcast called Electrify This. And then the Climate Action Homes podcast. I have interviews with people who have gone all electric. Different aspects of this is there as well. All right, so what is all the talk about electrifying everything? Why do we need to do that? This picture I love to show is the picture taken in 1968 by the Apollo 8 astronauts, Earthrise, and this is when they were orbiting the moon, came across and saw planet Earth and was like, this is this place where life is thriving in this sea of darkness. This is an amazing home that we have. And this is a picture from December 1972, the first time that we saw the Earth as this blue marble. This is our planet, this is our home. And of all the things that we are on our to-do list, this is the number one thing that being gifted life here, this is the number one thing that we can do is preserve life on the planet. When you see a picture like this, it's hard to really understand where is space and where is Earth. And really it is this very thin layer. This is what everybody is talking about with carbon emissions, and that we shouldn't be using our atmosphere as a dumping ground for all of our carbon. It may seem like it's this infinite layer, like why does it matter? But actually it's so thin. It's 60 miles. It's a very small number. If for some reason we could just hop in our car and drive straight up, then in an hour we'd be in space. This layer that is protecting all of life on the planet is just this very thin layer. It's if you had a piece of plastic that you wrapped around a basketball, that is how thin that layer is. This is what we're talking about of how critical it is to take care of this very thin layer that is keeping us all alive here. As a trained climate reality leader, one of the things that I learned a lot about is great sources that you can share with people. And NASA has some of the best data, and most people respect NASA. So it's a good one to share. You can see the temperature from 1880 to 2020. And the takeaway here is Earth's global surface temperature in 2020 is statistically tied with 2016 as the hottest year on record, continuing a long-term warming trend due to human activities. Another way to look at this is through the scientific visualization studio. You can see this is the temperature changing compared to the midpoint. Blue is colder than the midpoint of 1950, and red is warmer. I'm going to play that one more time and just have you take a look at that and think about what year you were born and how the planet has changed. It's hard for us to see this on a year-by-year basis, right? But this is a pretty short time window from 1880 to 2020. The bad news is this is what's happened during our lifetime. But the good news is if we have the power to actually change things, then we have the power to actually solve it as well. The IPCC report that came out in March 2023, this was the headline: Urgent Climate Action Can Secure a Livable Future for All. This was their main takeaway. Climate change is a threat to human well-being and planetary health, rapidly closing window of opportunity. The choices and actions implemented in this decade will have impacts now and for thousands of years. So if we're ever going to figure this out, if you're talking to somebody who's thinking about energy efficiency or electrification or going solar, really what we're doing right now in this decade is critical. So the better that we can be at helping people do that, the more effective we'll be. The World Resources Institute summarized that 8,000-page report. It's a really good resource to be able to share to show what all is happening with climate change. And any one of these things would be pretty scary, pretty astounding. But the fact that they're all happening together and have feedback loops that reinforce. The good news is that the 10 key solutions that were identified, if you look at the top 3, retire coal plants, invest in clean energy and efficiency, and retrofit and decarbonize buildings, all of those can be done when we help people go solar. So it's pretty cool. This is a really fulfilling thing to be a part of because it's so meaningful. Those global scientific organizations are saying we need to cut our greenhouse gas emissions. So people are setting goals to do that at the global level, the country level, state, region, city. At the global level, the goal from the US Sustainable Development Goals is that we need to get to net zero by 2050, and we need to decline by 43% by 2030. Look at your watch, man. We're already halfway through 2023. So this is something that really, the sooner that we can help people take action, the better. And so the US, our goals are reducing emissions 50% by 2030, net zero emissions by 2050. This is like building out the highway system. This is like building out the electrical grid for the first time. These are huge, massive things that are going to be happening really quickly. Just giving you an example of how this kind of chunks down. Colorado has goals of reducing by 50% for 2030, 90% by 2050. This is what that roadmap looks like. We're doing things on the utility level, but also right at the building level to be able to go solar and have zero emissions right there. And then in Denver, at the Denver level, a few people got together and had this idea, why don't we have a tax to raise money for climate action? It now generates $40 million a year. The reason that Denver is able to offer so many rebates is because of this 40 million per year that they now have for climate action and climate justice. And this is how their targets are set, is 100% greenhouse gas emission reduction by 2040. That's the background. When people say, oh, there's rebates, there are incentives, I think that we sometimes forget, like, why? And so that's what we need to be talking with people about. And in the previous class in the Solar 101, I present more of that information about how many people are actually concerned about it. And it's the majority, it's around 65% of Americans are concerned or alarmed about climate change. And so when we don't talk about it, we're missing a big opportunity. Connecting to people's values, their concern for their kids, let's talk about it and let them know that there is something that they can do. That was the background of this is why these different places have all these rebates to go solar, to install heat pumps, to upgrade your electrical for weatherization. So you'll see this great abundance. It's also somewhat confusing, but there's abundance of different rebates, incentives at the federal level from the utility, state, local grants, but also mandates like Denver looking at new energy codes for multifamily that are requiring all new multifamily to be electric. And they're considering that at some point for new residential as well. When we hear real estate advertisements, hey, this has a great gas cook stove, gas cooking, to understand that is going to be a detriment. That's not a luxury item. That is going to be a deduct in the very near future. So helping people understand future-proofing your home is going all electric because all these things are pushing for it. And if you could be helping clients get there, then that's going to be adding to the value of their home compared to somebody else's. How do you do all this? And with all those different rebates, finding qualified contractors is a big part of it. I recommend people start wherever you are. Your electric company probably has a low cost or free energy audit that you can do. And that's a great place to get started, get people thinking about what should I do. They often have contractors lists of approved contractors, like the city of Denver, they have a approved contractors list for all their rebates. There's a new thing I wanted to mention that is these electrification consultants, because what we're seeing is a lot of people just like heat pumps, induction cooking, solar, and they just stop because they can't figure out like, what are all the rebates? Should I do it now? Should I wait? What electrification consultants do is assessment, create an electrification plan, coordinate all those rebates and incentives, and some of them act as a general contractor to manage all those contractors. It's a way for people to move through this without having to figure this all out on their own. Here's a few of them in Colorado. Helio Home has been around for a long time. Elephant Energy is relatively new, I would say a couple of years. Hope to have a podcast interview with them shortly. And then another one, Zero Homes, is also fairly new. It's an NREL, National Renewable Energy Lab backed venture. It's just important to let people know that they don't have to figure this all out by themselves. There's people that can help them. This is from one of their websites. It's Start Your Electrification Journey. We're not going to order this on Amazon. You're not just going to click a button. Do you want medium, large, small? I wanted to just share that so that we're helping people get past that confusion and letting them know that there are folks out there that can help them. In the live version of the workshop, I didn't have these details in here about some of the incentives, but I think it'll be helpful to see this. Hopefully this underscores that there are so many incentives out there and that it's probably a good idea to use an electrification consultant or someone to help you sort through all of them. So this will be a top level view, not the be all end all list. The first place that I'm going to start is a really handy website. It's whitehouse.gov/clean energy. This has this awesome picture showing all the different ways that you can save money and do efficiency and electrification. The page, if you search for it, it's tax credits and rebates for families. The first thing, rooftop solar, and it shows here it's 30%. The new thing is that also includes battery storage. If you add that as part of your system, or if you do a standalone battery, that's something new in 2023. The next is for home and appliances, up to $1,200 for installation, efficient windows and doors, a credit of as much as $2,000 for electric heat pumps. You can also get a credit of $150 for a home energy audit. You can see it's a 30% tax credit for heat pumps. So that's really cool. It's the thing that we've been helping people go solar with, is this 30% tax credit. And so now this is available for heat pumps. And you can see some of the details here of up to $8,000 for low to moderate income or $4,000 for other households. Electric vehicles, there's some rebates here as well. For new qualified vehicles, it's up to $7,500, or for previously owned, $4,000. So that's at the federal level. And when I go to the Colorado Energy Office webpage, but you'll see the first thing that is shown is the rebates from the Inflation Reduction Act are not currently available. The Colorado Energy Office is awaiting federal guidance program for 2 rebate programs that will be administered by the state. So that's going to be the same for every state. This is just another way of seeing that same information, which is handy. So you can see 30% of the cost is what you get for the tax credit, up to a certain amount in each case. But it's awesome. Everything from home energy audits, doors, windows, insulation, panel upgrades, heat pumps, batteries, solar. All right, so now let's look at another way to look at this. I'm now looking at the Energy Sage website. One thing that wasn't mentioned on those previous two is that there are now some state tax credits. And this is a law that just took effect January 1st, 2023. So new state tax credit of 10% against the cost of equipment for heat pumps and heat pump water heaters, and a sales tax exemption of 2.9%. So the benefits are just piling on here. Now, if we look at Xcel Energy, we can see the Xcel benefits, air source heat pumps. So this is the whole home heat pumps that we're talking about now that work similar to an air conditioning unit, but year round to provide heating and cooling. So $1,000 for a high efficiency air source heat pump. If it's ground source, so that means if it has the pipes in the ground, it's more efficient, also more expensive. You can get up to $2,000 for that. And mini splits, like through the wall, those are $600 for those rebates. So those are the Xcel rebates. Now we're looking at the city of Denver's rebates, and they have a page here that shows how you can stack all these different rebates. So the Xcel Energy, the Denver, the federal, state, for households that have a total income of less than 80% of the area median income, there are additional programs through the Denver Healthy Homes program, and some of these others are a little bit higher for income qualified. Now we're looking at the Denver CARE rebate program. CARE as in CAR, Climate Action Rebate Program. And you can see they have a ton of them. Air source heat pumps, $1,500 for the basic high efficiency air source heat pump. So this would be a whole house unit that's replacing your gas furnace and AC. Cold climate is $3,500. Ground source, also $3,500. Mini split heat pumps, $1,500, or the cold climate mini splits, $3,500. Now, one of the things that a lot of people are doing is starting with a heat pump water heater, because that is a less expensive way to get into using heat pumps in your home. And there's rebates for that too, $1,000 for high efficiency heat pump, and $1,750 if you enroll in the Xcel Smart water heater program that allows Xcel to control that during high demand periods. Where it starts getting really interesting is that there's this great $4,000 rebate for solar, but you have to have already done the heat pump space heater or heat pump water heater or bidirectional charger, or have already contracted with somebody to put that in. And similarly with battery storage, there is a rebate from Denver for $2,750 if you've got one of these other heat pump or bidirectional chargers go in or installed. Otherwise, it's $500 for battery storage. There are also rebates for EV charging, the level 2 home wiring of $1,000, bidirectional charging up to $2,000. And in a lot of cases, you are going to need some kind of electric panel upgrade. So if you are applying for one of these other rebates from Denver, you can also apply for that electric service upgrade rebate of $2,000. So lots of great rebates from the city of Denver, but they're really interconnected. And so that is making it all the more important that you have somebody that can help you sort through all of that. And the last thing I wanted to mention is the Colorado RENU loan. And this is something that offers zero down, low cost, long-term financing. So this is a great way if you're doing a bunch of different things, including your solar, that you can package them all in one loan, your solar, your heat pump, insulation, your energy audit, all of those could be done together in your RENU loan. Okay, now we're going to flip back to the recorded part of the workshop. And some of this might repeat a little, but at least this will give you a better overview of what we're talking about with all the different rebates that are out there. And then next thing I wanted to do is ask Reed to chime in. In a lot of areas, especially like in Colorado, heat pumps has not been something in our homes. As I was saying earlier, a lot of people, if their furnace breaks down, they just get a new furnace. This is a completely different idea to go to a heat pump and really actually even to need air conditioning in a lot of Colorado. That's one of our key things that we're talking about is having a heat pump water heater, a ducted heat pump, a ductless heat pump. And so with that, I want to go ahead and turn it over to you, Reed. Thanks so much for being here too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Yeah, my name is Reed. I own Premier Heating and Air in Denver, Colorado. And I think a good place to start, a lot of people ask, so what are heat pumps? So basically what a heat pump is an air conditioner that also can heat your home in the wintertime using electricity instead of gas. The way the AC works right now is it removes the hot air from inside and takes it outside. The heat pump has the ability to basically work in reverse and extract heat from the outside air and basically bring it inside of your home to heat your house. And so basically what you would have is a 2-in-1 system that heats and cools the house. A lot of people aren't that familiar with heat pumps. You don't see them around all that often. You know, they are a lot more common in the warmer climates and then not as common in the colder climates. Heat pumps are becoming a lot more popular with all the additional incentives and just like you talked about, everybody going electric, but also increased gas prices are really making people think a little bit about better ways of heating their home. And with the addition of solar, it really becomes a lot more practical. So just looking at a couple differences too, when you're looking at heat pumps, the air that's coming out of the vents is not going to be as warm as like a typical furnace. I have a heat pump in my house. It works just fine. It's just a little bit different, but works fine. And then heat pumps aren't as economical if you don't have the solar panels in place. That's one thing to consider. You want to have that solar to really offset that additional cost, or you're just replacing one bill for the other type of thing. Some of the other pros, just things to consider, a lot of the incentives right now are really bringing the cost below a conventional system cost. It really makes sense to look at that versus just replacing your system with something similar to what you have. There are some cold climate heat pumps that are really designed to run in lower temperatures and really efficiently. And then I think just the environmental side, using electricity, more clean energy versus fossil fuels to heat your home. Another thing I really like to bring up is you're able to use that system throughout the year. Whereas an air conditioner, you're really only using it 3 or 4 months out of the year. It's kind of like a boat, it just sits on the side of your house the rest of the winter. With the heat pump, you're really able to utilize that throughout the entire year. So I think it's just a better investment. And yeah, if you have solar or if you're currently on something like propane, that payback is pretty quick. Another thing in the colder climates is a lot of the systems that we're installing are more of a hybrid type system. So you still have a furnace as your backup in case it gets really cold, or if one system goes out, you have the backup heat. Some of the last things is really looking at all of those incentives that are out there. The city of Denver is doing quite a bit. Right now, it's up to about $3,500 rebate on a heat pump. There is federal tax credits up to about $2,000, and then Xcel is also doing up to $2,000 rebate. And then the state they're working through a couple of the details there, but they're also going to have an additional incentive coming from the state. the last thing I'll just bring up is what to do when you're looking at sizing and things like that. Sizing is definitely extremely important. It's a little bit different than just looking at an air conditioner. There's a few things that we have to factor in. Getting somebody out or going through the whole load calculation to really figure out exactly the size that you need and really maximize the output and efficiency of the system. That's our number one objective. And really just to figure out everything that how you're going to utilize it, make sure that it's meeting all of your needs. There are certain ratings and requirements that we have to meet in order to qualify for all the different incentives. So that's another piece of that. And just looking at all the different options, there is a lot of different options as far as efficiency and how you want to set up the system.
One of the big things when I reached out to Reed, I was like, sizing. What the heck are we supposed to do when we're talking with a homeowner that wants to go solar? And then we ask them inevitably, okay, are you going to get an electric vehicle or are you going to get a heat pump? When they say, yeah, I've been thinking about a heat pump. How many panels would I need? When Reed and I were talking it gave me a little bit more confidence, understanding that we, as somebody that's helping someone with solar, or if you are a real estate pro, you're helping someone, that again, like with real estate, I was always taught you want to be the source of the source. That's when you get in trouble, is when you try to answer questions like that.
Yeah.
And it's the same for solar, that when somebody asks us a question like that, we don't want to be the one that answers that, but instead having a partner that we can reach out to. And one of the things that was pretty reassuring is when we were talking about like the Xcel Energy program, that in order to get that rebate, that they require a certain kind of sizing protocol that needs to be gone through. And this is where a lot of the problems historically have happened, is that somebody's furnace goes out and it's 3 a.m. and they just want the heat back on and they haven't planned anything ahead. Even the installer might say this is actually oversized and they're like, well, I don't want to risk it. Just give me that bigger system. There's a lot of disadvantages to doing that. So it's great to have the incentives tied to that. And then what you were saying also, Reed, about that when it gets to those colder temperatures, it could go into electric heating or it could go to a gas backup. And depending which way somebody goes, that could really change that size, how much size they need. And with Xcel, we're now talking about time of use. It might be more electricity during the winter, but maybe it's not during peak time, or maybe it is. So it gets more complicated. And so the one takeaway I had was, don't promise things about solar and your heat pump load, for one thing, because there's too many factors to just say, oh, we'll add 6 panels and you'll be fine. That's a recipe for unhappy customers.
Yeah, I think, every situation is a little bit different. And like you said, just being the source of the source. And that's something that we can look at. We do free estimates, and based off of the calculations and everything like that, we can really get down to those exact numbers as far as kilowatt usage and output and things like that.
Yeah, so that's great. The next person that we want to hear from is Charlie Wilde. And Charlie is another independent power consultant. There's a lot of us here on this platform and able to help people go solar in 20-some states and Puerto Rico. Charlie, coming from the background of having his own solar company and always thinking about rebates, and especially with the Denver ones, it's important which order you do things in to what people qualify for. And also, that's also changing like that. Those Colorado ones that are hitting, it's probably going to be retroactive if you do something in 2023, but we don't know exactly the specs for what there's going to be required and how that's all going to happen. So again, it's a changing landscape.
Okay. Yeah, so Denver has one of the most generous incentives anywhere in the nation for PV rebates or PV. However, in order to qualify, you have to have either a heat pump or a bidirectional EV charger installed at your home. And they're doing that because they're trying to encourage people to do the electrify everything path, where you're not just getting solar and keeping your gas furnace, but you're making other changes as well that works for the world and the climate. And really, for each individual, you're going to save a lot more money if you invest in these other technologies too. Basically, to qualify for the solar rebate, the PV rebate, you either have to have installed or you can have it installed in parallel with your PV installation. You don't have to do it first and then do the PV. You can just show that, yeah, I've hired this contractor and he's applied for the rebate for the heat pump, and then that qualifies you for the PV rebate. So it's either an air heat pump or a water heat pump. I wanted to mention the other rebates, Joan, that are relevant, because I've had 2 customers now that do multiple rebates. They already had their heat pump installed, but both of them needed a main service panel upgrade because they're maxed out on their breaker panel. There's a $2,000 rebate for that. If you decide to go with battery, there's a $2,000 rebate for a battery system. If you get an EV charger installed, there's a $1,000 rebate for that. If you have a bidirectional one, it's an even higher rebate. If you're talking to a client, if you're in real estate and talking to a homeowner about it, just make sure that they know that it's not just solar and not just heat pumps. It's EV chargers, it's service panel upgrades, and all of these things often work together because you're putting more electricity out there. You're electrifying everything. Sometimes you need to upgrade your service panel, and they provide a very generous incentive for that. So it's a good deal.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. And Charlie helped push this through because most of us that are doing solar, we're just thinking solar, but then it's got these tentacles. It's, this could be a really great thing for our clients to know about. And so then the other thing I wanted to mention was that for the city of Denver, as an example, since they're saying you need a heat pump before you get that $4,000 PV rebate, that you could do a heat pump water heater, which is less expensive than the whole house heat pump. So they could do a heat pump water heater, then do solar, and then do a heat pump, for example, and get all those kind of cascading rebates.
And I just want to put a plug in for the Colorado RENU lending program too. That was a program that was started by the state of Colorado, and you can finance solar and all sorts of energy upgrades, all the ones that we've been talking about in this meeting, but also new windows, insulation for your house, all kinds of upgrades that you can do and throw it all into the same loan. And it's a nice, convenient way to do it, to invest in these upgrades that you need. And it's a very generous program in terms of there's no dealer fees for a RENU loan, just like $100, I think you might end up paying just to get it started. And that compares with thousands of dollars in dealer fees with other solar loans. So it's a really good deal. Anywhere in Colorado, you can use the RENU program. It's a good program.
I have another video on that on the Climate Action Homes YouTube channel. And so what we really want to be letting people know is that there are solutions. Like, we can all be solutionaries in this, and no one has to go it alone. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Really thankful for everyone that's thinking about this. How can we go that extra mile, take those extra steps, and really be part of this most important job number one of protecting our planet and making it fun and accessible for everyone.